Welcome! This is what this video is about. A simple tree from sapling tree generator with a root system, a leaf system, and flowers. In bloom and shown with bloom. It's a clever thing that only Blender 2.8 can do. And we're going to use edit and preferences and activate some add-ons here, including Node Wrangler, before too long. And then we'll go ahead and learn how to make the root system, and we'll sort of fumble through a ground just a little bit. Everything that you see here is something that is meant for you to go and improve later on down the line. I think this project produces some very attractive results right out of the box, and so I wanted to share with you the creation of a tree in bloom for Blender 2.8. If that's something you're interested in, this might be the video for you. Get ready. Hello, hi, hola, handle and greeting Blender 2.8. I'm going in via the brand new beta as of today. Here we go. I'm going to set this up very quickly. Maybe you'll see it all, maybe not. Window allows me to toggle the window full screen, which is something I think a lot of us had appreciated before. Preferences is hiding under edit, and I'll tell you, the key map, I have had some weird problems with left click selecting, so I'm going to set it to a right click select. More importantly, what I want you to do is search for sap. The sapling is something that we could use, and some of you may really already know and enjoy the scatter objects, which is something that is extremely useful and just really elegant and easy to use in Blender 2.8. And I'm trying to think very quickly if there was something else I wanted to use for this particular project. Nothing comes to mind. So I'm going before I exit that, I'm going to click Save Preferences. There is, when you download one of these beta things, you just keep downloading. But you have to make your own config folder, and then Blender automatically populates it with a user pref file, and that's what I've been doing right now. So I'm going to get rid of this, and here we are, Blender 2.8. It, by default, is using the Eevee render engine. I'm going to leave it like that, although I'm not sold yet. But when Cycles first started, I also wasn't too sold on that. And Sapling Tree Gen is now available under Shift-A Curve. I'm going to put that in, and down in the bottom left corner, sort of the extension of what we can do with what we've just done. So now I'm using the mouse controls to go ahead and get over here. I am not going to go through creating a tree. I am going to tell you that the preset of a Japanese maple will get us closer to where it is that we would like to be for this project. And from geometry, I will then go to branch splitting and put my levels from 2 to 3, and I will also activate visibility of leaves and change the number from a -5, which makes them all appear on the ends there, to 30 or 60, depending how strong your computer is. I'll go with 30 right now. And for some of, I've done this a couple of times, and sometimes the standard leaf size is good. Sometimes I wish it had been a little bit smaller. But just in case you wanted to see what 60 looks like, it really loads the tree full of leaves. And that is actually very attractive, but because this is just for demonstration purposes, I will put it to 30. You can hear my throat is all like not quite right. So now we're done with that. Good job. We're going to have a look at our transform, the widget gizmo, which used to be some other keyboard shortcut. And I want to make a copy of this trunk and rotate it on the Y, because if I have the X-axis shooting off to the right, then it's sort of like looking at that piece of paper, and it's the Y-axis that recedes into the distance. And that's just sort of the way I think Blender has done it before, even though it's a little topsy-turvy with materials, and I'll show you that in just a moment. So Shift-D, R-Y 180 does exactly what I said. And now we've got it going in that direction. You can see that the, come on, Shift mouse wheel is having a good time with me. So what I was going to say is that this is object data for a curve object, and we like that it's a curve. Now I'm going to right click select, because I set my mouse that way, the top tree here. Now it used to be Alt-C that would take the object and convert it to mesh. Now when I do that, I'm going to jump without touching anything else into the UV editing workspace. It's already put me in edit mode without my having to do it. That's pretty cool. When I select with the letter A all of the number 3 on the keyboard faces for this tree, you could see Shift Home fills the available view space with whatever it is over here of your texture. Shift Home again will do that. Control space is what we use to toggle the full screen view of that pane. All new shortcuts, baby. Anyway, it is beautifully unwrapped, and that is exactly the way we're going to leave it. I'm going to go back to the layout workspace and drift down here to the materials tab. I wish this would go on top, you know? Like I would pull this over and have it on top like the good old days. But if you right click it, you can actually, if you right click in negative space, you can flip it over to the right. I don't know if that's good for anyone, but it's something that I thought maybe I would tell you about if you hadn't seen it yourself, because I've been right clicking and left clicking like crazy just to see what I could see. So bark is what we're going to call this, and I don't want to use principal because that takes up a lot of computer power to do it. In my main window, Shift F3 will get me, letter N will get the properties shelf hidden, and this is my node editor is where it gets me. I want to do a mix of colors, and those colors are going to be brown colors for bark. So, oh, that's what I wanted to enable. Back into Edit and Preferences, Add-ons, do a search for Node, and Node Wrangler will come up. I knew it. Exit that. Anyway, so now Node Wrangler allows different options to be available. A desaturated red-orange that is dark. And then click and drag that into the bottom color slot and make it a little darker. Congratulations and thank you. This mixed color is not going to strictly be the only thing that goes in there. Shift A for a texture. We'll use wave. That wave and the color of it, or factor of it, will inform the switch between browns. And how do you ask? Well, we're going to use Control T, and that is now, thanks to Node Wrangler, going to give us texture coordinates. We're going to use the UV directly, and just for right this moment, I'm going to change the Y on scale to 0.1. Shift F5 takes us back to the 3D view, and now I am ready to change my view to some sort of shaded look dev, give me something view. I don't really know what I'm looking at. Kind of my problem, I guess. That's really not doing it for me. So if I mouse over, oh, there's something else I used to do. I enjoy scene lights, and there's also a button in user preferences, one of the options where you could just have your mouse hang over something. Hangout. Where's mouse hangout? Zoom to mouse position. That's kind of a must for me. Auto depth is actually very helpful, and I'm now, oh, and that spacebar, geez. Spacebar searches, not plays. Thank you. And let's leave it at that. All right. Fine. Let's go all the way. And, oh, you know what? The reason I can't see it is because its scale is so small. Yes, that's right. Shift F3 anywhere you want. Letter N, get rid of that properties tool shelf and hide it on the side. My scale is still very tiny. I have a habit of putting this up to 50, and that allows me to see, there we go, stripes, little Beetlejuice stripes right there. And then I could also change that to saw, and it makes the stripes a lot more vivid. This is probably the darkest I've ever done it. I wonder if I should lighten that up a bit, because even I'm confused. And this is my tutorial. Now all I have to do is right-click the trunk on the bottom, which is like the reflection, and select that material of bark from the list of very few options. What's interesting is we did not convert this from a curve into mesh data, and it still works correctly like it's unwrapped. I want some minty green leaves, and that means I need a new material called leaves. I will click on Principled BSDF, and then when I'm up in this list, press the letter D on the keyboard. It will get me to diffuse. You can see that all of them have one letter underlined, and that's the one that you will jump right to if you press that letter. So a yellow-green that is kind of darkish. and that is going to be the color of the leaves. So A, and then A. Now, you probably need me to sell you on something very quick, because here we have an obvious tree, and you're thinking, wow, I really didn't need someone to teach me how to do that. But if you select our reflected tree down here, you can press Tab to go into edit mode and see that it is still the curves. Very cool. A selects them all. Now, instead of using the median point, I'd like you to use the 3D cursor. So any changes we make, use this to be the point of origin, where it all goes to. Z.1. Enter, tab back into object mode. You can turn off your overlays, and now you begin to get an idea of what it is that you've just created. Some lumpy, knobby, bumpy roots on the ground. There is no ground we can do that. I've wrestled with that quite a bit, because like, what's the right ground? Some grounds are good if they're circles extruded. Some grounds are better if they're more organic looking. For right now, I'm going to tab into a circle that I created with Shift A and ES and extrude, with the number 2 to be on edge select mode. I will, I wonder if I've already ruined that. Just by. So Shift A to create a circle, and then I will tab into edit mode, press number 2 to make sure I'm on edge select mode, ES, and then pull to extrude edges. And this is just so much fun, and it's so easy. And then scale this down to cover the trunk of the tree. Because it's they're all quads, Control R and rolling that mouse wheel will work just fine, because we did not create a series of triangles, we created a bunch of quads. So I Control Alt right click select these edges, and now 1 and Alt Shift right click select, so that now I'm only grabbing the stuff right in the middle, and the stuff is vertices. I'm going to lower this to an extreme below the roots, and I know we can improve those roots. I'll show you that in just a moment. I'm lowering down to the bottom of those roots, and now with my proportional editing enabled in smooth, I will G and Z and pull this sort of, up. Like, think now a mound of mulch, okay? So it kind of covers some of the roots and kind of doesn't cover some of the others. And it doesn't have to be exact whatsoever. I've kind of gotten a kick also out of pulling up. For some reason, like it's kind of artistic, but I've kind of enjoyed pulling up the outside here and extruding that outward as time goes on. The roots, with the shading mode on, and even without very good shadows, we can see that our root system has some finer detail roots sticking out above our ground, as silly as our ground may be. We need the roots, we would like the roots to be kind of down low. I wouldn't mind choosing some of the, that's A twice, choosing some of the roots that are way up here and then exaggerating their height to get them above all the others. But the other way to do it, which sometimes works and sometimes gives a little difficulty, is to choose one of the extremities and then with Shift G select similar with an equal radius, and you can see that information down in the bottom left. I've done that before with this proportional editing, which I sometimes call the soft selection, and the problem is that our roots are all at different heights here, so it gets a little peculiar. And so if I do try it right now with an even bigger proportional fall off, it's interesting. But I don't know if it's something that would please a lot of people. So we'll just do it for there for now. And then Z6 to go back into solid. And these are the roots that are left above ground. We can, of course, lower the ground. And it begins to reveal more and more things. So the fun thing is, it's a little bit wild, a little bit random. But I kind of dig how that transpires. I thought you might dig it too. And so GZ with proportional editing, just to not let light soak in through the bottom there, or seep in through the bottom, if you will. And the letter O will turn off proportional editing so that you can really seal that up. I'm still pulling towards the 3D cursor. Don't forget, you might be too. Double check if you're using your median point as the origin that everything goes to. A material for the ground. I thought that I had gone a bit artistic on this, and chosen a bit of a purple, and so I moved my value down to a 0.5, and then my RGB, I had increased the B for a bit of a nice blue. And when I had done that, the value had also climbed up to 1, which is kind of fun. Roots are great, man, but the real meat of this show, I'm going to hide the leaves because they do get awfully distracting in this next part. So that's right click, whatever, let's select them and the letter H. I'm after this stuff, man. It's what I'm after. So I'm going to tab into edit mode and double click A very quickly. I'm going to press the number 2 on the keyboard and get into an edge select mode. I'm going to find any edge I feel like, and I just randomly chose this edge right over here. It is a loop. See if I can get it in the clearing for you. Wow, that's not clear at all. And I lost it. I don't know, whatever, just choose one. Here's one in the middle. Okay. And same trick of choosing similar things. I'm going to select only one. Now you can see it, except I'm going to clip view right out of it or whatever. Okay, so I've got one. Now Shift G allows me to select similar length. And I'm going to put this to 0 and press decimal on my number pad, and you can see all these little specks of yellow around the tree, and it's chosen almost always the very edges of all of these branches, almost always. And what I'm going to do is now click into the Object Data tab and create a new group called Tips. Tips is going to be assigned the current selection. One more thing to do, because I know that we have a couple of stowaways in here, although I'm kind of hard-pressed to prove it. This one has some selections that are not on the edge, so I'm going to select an edge, which really is tricky as hell, and Shift G, amount of faces around an edge. Oh. Now that absolutely selects the edges, but it also selects some of these intersecting pieces right here where the mouse is spinning. I'm pressing the number 1 on the keyboard to switch to vertex select mode. Control I will invert the selection, and I will remove any selected vertex from the group tips. This means, that's A twice on the keyboard, which it's a little slow to respond. Let's try that again. Then when we select tips as the vertex group, really, truly only the tips will be selected unless some of them ended up being the intersections of branches. But that verifies that works. I wanted to go into particles and create a new system that is hair. That hair is going to be short. It's not going to be 4. It's going to be 0.1, believe it or not, and put the number down to 60 or 100 or something, just so you get an idea of what it is that you're looking at. Go to vertex groups, because the suspense is already dead. We know it's going to tips, but most importantly, it's the hair shape that we're after. The strand shape is what we're going to be playing with, and I'm doing things a little out of order from my normal, so hopefully this doesn't bite me in the butt. That was this, and that was that. 0.46 on the tip, a radius scale 0.04, which is really kind of important. It's like a multiplier, and now we need to make it so that these things are visible. Hair is a tab beneath the render tab. I guess it's a flyout beneath the render tab. Go from strand to strip. I saw one come to life. There it is. Oh, I'm going to move it. There we go. Here's one over here. So I only did 60. So now you can see they're sort of fan shapes. And these fan shapes appear at the edges, just like the leaves once had. Give it no additional subdivisions. That has been my my experiment. Close tip, open tip. Please open tip. And just kind of leave it the way it is right now. Let's talk about children. I know, maybe you're new here, but don't be shy. Simple children. Let's talk about simple children. These are flowers, okay? So we don't need 10 or 100. We need 5 or 7. I've been using 5 just because I'm traditional like that. And the length is going to be 100% of the original. Where this really begins to count is when you use clumping. So if your clumping is at -1, they all join together at the base, and they create that kind of funky flower shape. You know what? I'm feeling crazy. Maybe this time we'll go 7. I've been doing 5 as I test this thing out. And it's funny because each version of Blender 2.8 is new since it's in beta. And so it's like, it's just been kind of neat to explore different little odds and ends. I got to turn these overlays off because that drives me crazy. That yellow is super thick. I know that we can fix it and make it smaller somewhere, but I just have not been bothered doing that. We would like a new material along with the tree because right now it's only bark. I want you to click the plus sign to add a new available slot and then create a new material to go in that slot. Call it petals. Shift F3 once again to go into the node editor. Period on your number pad will bring you to any active nodes that are sitting around. Shift S is a way to switch node types thanks to the node Wrangler. You can't use Shift S otherwise. Shift A, switch that to diffuse. Shift A converter. My mouth is faster than my hands. I kind of like that. Maybe. Plug the color into the color and then position of the black color stop to 0.3. Click on the black color stop and select a deep, rich violet pink, perhaps, and make sure that deep and rich, but visible. So that's like a value of about 0.5. And then we're going to go and press Shift A for input of hair. And it's this very interesting intercept option that will do us best of all. I encourage you to explore strand thickness and a couple other ideas. Shift F5 to get back to this. Petals will not appear as petals until you go into display, until you go into render, and choose the correct material. Once done, they will look the way you expect them to look now that you've done that. I'm going to change these sizes a little bit more because they don't look right. So the clump curve. After doing those numbers, I didn't change the shape. It's a negative number. That's so slow. Is it a negative number? Maybe not. 0.25. It is a... All right, now we're going to go to clump curve. Drag the first point down, leave the final point up, and then choose if your flowers are like wide open, one way or another way. I don't know. I'm never quite sure. So they're herky-jerky, right? Like this is all kind of segmented. The way to control these segments, I sometimes get it and sometimes don't get it. The segments, all right, so that's children. Here we go. There's B-spline, strand render, adaptive render, 5s, 3s. The steps for B-spline, that is sometimes good. These segments, that's one that I see makes a small change. I've usually just gotten so far back that it doesn't affect anything. Strand shape, of course, is worth playing with, and it's kind of like a facing normal. You can't look down the edge of this thing. It just sort of continues to change shape until it can just sort of practically see the camera. So that's a render saver. That's very interesting. If you make it too fat, all the pink goes away. But these are mighty long. I've done this a couple times and they just keep changing size. Those, I wanted them, husky, but not so long. So I'm changing the length of the children, and that is doing a good job all across the board. Now let me back off, and you can see the size of those relative to the tree. And around here, there are some dark barked trees that have flowers suspiciously like that. Alt-H, and we bring back all of our good leaves. Since we were working at a low number of 100, it would be good of us to now put it to the default of 1000, and you can see all of the happy flowers up inside the happy tree with the happy leaves. There they are, and the sky is controlled right here with the World tab in the thing over there, the properties menu, and I've been edging the red up just for fun because it looks kind of good. And so I'm moving a little too fast, I guess. Or I was looking at the wrong render view, so a little bit of red, a little dark. Changing the strength is a way to fake its brightness or darkness or whatever. And one thing that's kind of cool, we can click on light, and the light, which has its tab down here, has a custom distance. Blender Cycles was so, hard pressed. I'm going to type 12 just to begin. So hard pressed to be physically correct that it didn't let you do things like this and force kind of a vignette fall off, which I think is kind of pretty. And it's what we're going to do. And there's like soft shadows and stuff. Bloom is something that I have enjoyed turning on for this project when I create some of the screenshots. And it enables some of the reflection. If you turn, the flowers follow you, but the leaves do not, and they get a little pitch blacky. So I have also enjoyed clicking to select the leaves, going into their materials, and doing something as simple as this. Shift F3. Shift A, add shader, and then Shift A. That shader is translucent, and I kind of borrowed the same color by clicking and drag from the diffuse node, but then when I click, I just put it a little bit more towards the yellow and a little bit darker so that it doesn't go nuts with all of its subsurface scattering, which has to be turned on. And so you can find that here in the Render tab or the Render settings, Subsurface Scattering, and then it kind of re-renders your scene and brings a little bit of flavor in around these edges. And if you had several of these trees and the light shining through, you could have a really good time. The Japanese maple is interesting because it's wavy all by itself. You could add more intrigue to that bark, because if you remember, the bark is using... Ooh, hello. That's not bark. The bark is using this wave texture, and there is a way to straighten things out. We had turned the scale to 0.1, and I did that just to be really fast. But if you put it back to a 1.0 and change the rotation of Z to 45, it's going to be so small. You now get some nearly horizontal edges for that bark. I would say play around, but probably a lot of people don't know how to play around. So I'm like going to feed you some numbers here. But I really encourage you to try your own numbers if you're going to mess around with bark and see what you can come up with. This is such a small part of the project to me that I did not go crazy fine-tuning wonderful numbers. I just sort of ended up with something, a little Beetlejuice, a little Dr. Seuss, and went with it. And it looked okay with me. Putting something into... no. So guess what Shift Space does? It runs the timeline. So what I meant was Control Space up here. Putting things into displacement, was it a bump or was it normal or something? I have accidentally done that. Shift S because Node Wrangler is turned on, and the letter D. How funny. I thought it looked good. There's that animation player again. I bet I keep making that mistake over and over. Anyhow, you could make that, instead of the color, you could make it the bump, and then when you're looking behind the tree, that's why it was shining so funny. I thought, it's Blender 2.8. Whatever. No, it was my fault. I'll review the video and find out where that happened. Having that texture bump this bark can be very successful. I wish you great amounts of success, that you guys have found me and enjoy following me. It makes me really happy. Your comments are things that I read as soon as they come in. I get alerted from my little telephone and my tablet device. And I think this tree was kind of a worthy thing, Shift F9 for the outliner. The tree was sort of a fun way to go and explore some of Blender 2.8, although it's not formal yet. That was the wrong place to put 250. Letter N, we'll let you do that. Blender 2.8 is coming along. I haven't spent a lot of time inside of it because it's still in beta version and things change. But I was glad to see that the sapling tree generator was still a plug-in add-on that was supported. Some of my favorite things to do in Blender are not yet supported, so that kind of bothers me. And that's why I'm taking my sweet time. That's a good beauty shot, isn't it? So feel free to subscribe, spread the word. I don't have a lot of followers, but if you see something you like, share it, man, and share with me some of the things that you've done. I appreciate your likes. Thanks for watching.